Hello again, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the only sports talk show that really matters right here on IUP-TV. It's The Big Hit. We've got a lot of football talk here in this next hour, but we're going to begin in the world of Major League Baseball, previewing the 2015 postseason. We'll break down every playoff matchup on the other side of the studio and give our predictions for the World Series here in Major League Baseball. And then we'll move into the NFL and look at the Thursday night debacle for the Pittsburgh Steelers in their kicking game, provide the best and worst teams here through the first month of the season. And then it's time to move into college football as we recap the biggest matchups of the past week. And then we'll close out the show talking some IUP Crimson Hawks football. A record-breaking day for the IUP football team. We'll have all the story for you, and then look at the PSAC West Clash against the Seton Hill Griffins. And then to close things out, my man Will Gaucher is here to provide us with his 2-minute drill. All that and a lot more coming your way on the only sports talk show that really matters, The Big Hit. Hello again, everybody, and welcome into another episode of The Big Hit right here on IUP-TV. We're happy to have you back for another week of sports talk, and we are here on the other side of the studio once again to talk some Major League Baseball as the playoffs are here. We will preview the Major League Baseball playoffs. We'll start in the American League, and we are here with our MLB analyst. Very happy to welcome Jake Enders, Jose Villanueva, and Chris Hayes here to the Set I'm Josh show. Guys, before we talk about some news on the field, we'll start with a big story off the field, mainly because of the timing, because Yankees ace CC Sabathia has decided to check himself into an alcohol rehabilitation center right as the playoffs were commencing here. The Yankees actually playing tonight. So what are your thoughts on this recent news? CC Sabathia having a good year for the Yankees, and he'll miss the rest of the postseason.
Well, for me, this is one of those situations where you just have to push aside sports and focus on the person. CC Sabathia would not be going to treatment unless he absolutely needed to, especially with the Yankees on the doorstep of the playoffs. I think this is not going to tarnish his legacy one bit, because as we've seen, the general public is very willing to forgive athletes, and especially ones who come out and say, I need help, I need to be, affected by this. So I just feel like this is a good thing for CC Sabathia, but really bad timing for the Yankees.
Yeah, definitely this hits home as a Yankees fan, because watching CC the past 6 years has been like a dream of mine. I wanted him in 2008 when he was throwing great ball for the the Brewers, excuse me, and the Indians. He's a great pitcher, he's a great guy, but from many reports I've heard, one of the best liked players in MLB. So my hat's off to him. It's a very tough disease to overcome, but I believe he can do it, and praise to him.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation, but I saw he released a statement, and in the statement he said something like, I'm not too big to ask for help. Like, I want my kids to see me as a role model eventually down the line. So I think it's really good that he wasn't too big to ask for help. He got help, and now he'll hopefully be on the road to recovery. But it's a tough situation for the Yankees, tough situation for CC. He's had kind of a rough year, so maybe that has something to do with it. Who knows? But we'll see how he responds next year.
Yeah, hard to put it in better terms than you guys said. I think it says a lot about CC as a person and the moral wherewithal he has to go at this time of year and say, I need help and I need to do something like this. So certainly I think I speak for everybody when we wish him the best in his recovery. Hopefully he's back out on the field next season. But there is a game to be played, and it's probably about 30 minutes or so away from first pitch here between the Yankees and the Astros in the AL wildcard game. Masahiro Tanaka taking the mound for the New York Yankees. Now that Sabathia is gone, Nathan Eovaldi is just returning from an injury for the Yankees as far as their pitching staff. Will the team have a strong enough starting rotation to make noise in October, because they're down a couple of big arms in their rotation?
I don't think so, and to be honest, I don't think they did even before CC Sabathia went into treatment. You look at their roster, they really don't have any pitching at all, other than the bullpen, starting pitching. Nathan Eovaldi is their only pitcher with a decent record, and his ERA is in the 4s. He has received exceptional run support. So who are you going to give the ball to in a Game 1 or a Game 7 of a series? Tanaka? I mean, maybe, but I don't think they have what it takes. I see whoever wins this game between the Astros and the Yankees, I see them falling relatively quickly to the Royals in the division series.
That might be the only point where I actually agree with you because I did say I was a Yankees fan, but I do have extreme confidence in my team. Tanaka, he's battled like so many injuries, but he is a big game pitcher, and this is the spotlight. Keuchel, it's second year in the league, never in the playoffs, never a big game like this. So I think they definitely win, but like Jake said, they're not going to pass the Royals.
I'm with Jake on this one. Besides Tanaka, they don't have many guys. They have Michael Pineda. Ivan Nova might pitch some games if they advance to play the Royals, but Eovaldi, but like you said, his stats are kind of skewed. So, I mean, I'm not sure about the Yankees. I mean, their rotation has kind of been their downfall. They're in first place for most of the season, and then once Toronto got David Price, it was kind of all over from there. So we'll see what the Yankees can do if they win this game, but I'm not too optimistic either, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys kind of previewed the pitching matchup here in the AL wildcard game. The Yankees have to go through Dallas Keuchel, who the Astros are sending to the mound, potential AL Cy Young Award candidate, one of the best home records and home ERAs in the history of baseball, but he hasn't been great on the road, just 5-8 with an ERA of about 3.7 for Dallas Keuchel. He's pitching on 3 days rest as well, so he's been Houston's ace all year long, but this is certainly an unprecedented situation for him. Is this a reason for Houston to be concerned entering this game on the road against the New York Yankees?
Well, every team has reasons to be concerned going into a one-game playoff. I mean, is there a harder situation to predict than a one-game playoff? 162 games distilled down into 9 innings. I mean, every team has a reason to be concerned, but I do think the Astros are in a good place because Keuchel, you mentioned his road record is not exemplary. However, he has pitched against the Yankees twice, once in Yankee Stadium, and he has 2 wins, and he hasn't given up a single run. So I think that it helps him. I think it helps him being a lefty going against a lot of left-handed hitters. And I think Keuchel will pull it out. I think he is the better pitcher in this game. And I think the Astros will win. But, of course, in 3 hours, we'll know if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, the one thing that the Astros do not have is playoff experience, first time since 2005. So no one on that very young team has anywhere idea close what it's going to be like. And I think that's what the difference is tonight. The playoff experience of the Yankees, even A-Rod, who many people do not like, is going to show tonight. And honestly, the Yankees postseason is going to be defined about how Alex hits. In 2009, he hit 346, 10 home runs, and like 20 RBI, something like that, and they won with Breeze. So we'll see.
If you're Houston, I think the one guy you want to have on the mound is Dallas Keuchel. I mean, he's been their ace all year. He started the All-Star game. He's a Cy Young candidate. His stats are poor on the road, but like you said, Jake, in Yankee Stadium, he's been solid, allowed no runs. He's been great against the Yankees. So if you're the Yankees, you're fearing Dallas Keuchel in this game, even though the Astros are an up-and-coming team, like you said, never been in the playoffs. But that could be a good thing, too. I mean, they have no expectations, really, so I think Keuchel will show up tonight.
Yeah, it's the chase for 28 for the New York Yankees going up against Houston here. Both teams haven't been in the playoffs in a couple of years, so good to see these teams back at it. And they have a team waiting for them. Whoever wins the AL wildcard game has a team waiting for them, and they just happen to have the best record in the American League. The Kansas City Royals, 95-67 this year. If you're Royals manager Ned Yost, would you rather face Houston or New York if given the choice?
If I'm Ned Yost, I'm sitting in Kansas City wearing a Tanaka jersey because the only thing you want is for the Yankees to win this game. You want to go against and tee off against that terrible starting pitching that we mentioned. I do not think the Yankees will win. However, I think the Royals would really appreciate it if they did.
Clearly, this is very opposite-sided, so we'll see who the Royals face. But no matter what, they're going to come out on top. They're the best team in the American League by far, and they've showed that 162 games. I don't think the Blue Jays can compete with them and how well they played last year, and I think the magic from last year comes back, and I think we'll see them in the World Series.
I'm with Jake once again. I mean, if you're Kansas City, you want to see the Yankees because their pitching has been so subpar. I mean, last year, just look at the two wildcard teams that won last year. They went to the World Series. I'm not saying the Yankees will do that. In fact, I'm not saying that at all. But I think if the Astros win this game, they have a legitimate chance to upset the Royals. But the Yankees, with their pitching, I just don't see it happening. So if I'm Kansas City, I'm rooting for the Yankees tonight.
Yeah, no matter who wins the AL wildcard game, certainly a tough task waiting for them in Kansas City. But there is another American League Divisional Series to touch on, and we'll do that right now as Jeff Bannister and his Texas Rangers are in the playoffs, and they're ready to square off against the Toronto Blue Jays. Earlier in the year, it looked like both of these teams were a long shot at best to make it into the playoffs, but really both teams made some pivotal moves at the trade deadline to put themselves in a position, now have two of the best records in the American League, obviously facing off in the division series here. Is it safe to say that this is the MLB's most highly anticipated playoff matchup right now, this Texas and Toronto American League Division Series?
I wouldn't say so, because I feel like this is a mismatch more than a lot of people do, because I look at the Texas Rangers pitching records and their ERA ranked 23rd in the league this year. So, I mean, the Blue Jays obviously have the most explosive offense in baseball and have for the past several years with Bautista, Donaldson, and Encarnacion. They scored 127 more runs than the next most explosive offensive team. So going up against Texas's mediocre to below average pitching, I feel like Toronto will make quick work of the Astros and go on to the ALCS.
Yeah, that's the one time I will agree with you. Toronto's going to destroy them, and it's not going to be close. Texas has not looked like a superior team, and as we know in MLB, like the best teams win convincingly, and Toronto's just shown way too much that they can't be beaten.
I disagree, actually. I think this is not only not the most interesting matchup, I think it's the third most interesting matchup behind Mets-Dodgers. I think that's the most interesting. With the Mets pitching, the Dodgers pitching, it'll be a showdown. And then the Cubs-Pirates game, whoever wins that against the Cardinals, I think that will also be a great series. And I disagree, too, with the outcome. I think Texas will win this series. I think Toronto, they're obviously been a great team, but they're a great regular season team to me. They have no playoff experience. I mean, Texas has a lot of guys that are new, too. But I believe in Texas and their manager. Jeff Bannister's done a great job. Toronto just seems too much like a gimmick kind of team to me in the regular season.
Yeah, all these teams, we've touched on all the teams who are in the American League here in the postseason. So to close out this half of our MLB playoff preview, I want to leave you with the question of who you think will represent the American League in this year's World Series. Who takes the crown and will represent the American League?
I'm taking the Blue Jays. I think their offense will just overwhelm Kansas City's pitching. The Royals brought in Johnny Cueto to be kind of their number one stopper, their ace, and he's been very disappointing. And after him, what are you looking at? Edinson Volquez is their best pitcher. To me, I don't see them withstanding Toronto's offensive onslaught. And the Blue Jays brought in David Price specifically to be that number one starter. And if anybody can go on a roll like we saw from Madison Bumgarner last year, David Price is right at the top of the list for me. So I have the Blue Jays going to the World Series representing the American League this season.
See, I do like David Price, and I do think he's a great pitcher. Hopefully he comes to the Yankees next year. But I'm taking the Royals. Chemistry trumps everything, even including that powerful offense. And they're fun to watch. Last year they did not lose until the World Series, and I think it can happen again.
I'm taking Texas by process of elimination. I mean, I picked them to beat Toronto. Kansas City, they've had the best record. They've been the best team in the American League, but they kind of fell off the map towards the end of the season. And teams that do that typically don't really pick themselves back up. I mean, just look at Oakland last year in the wild card game. And then the Yankees and Astros, they're the wild card teams for a reason. They each had their missteps throughout the season, so I'm taking Texas.
A couple of different perspectives here as to who represents the American League in the World Series. We're going to take a quick break and come back with the second half of our MLB playoff preview as we discuss the National League and all of the matchups therein. We'll be back here on The Big Hit. Welcome back into The Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for part two of our MLB playoff preview. The 2015 postseason is here, and we just got finished breaking down the American League side of things, and now we'll move over to the National League playoff race here with our MLB analysts Jake Enders, Jose Villanueva, and Chris Hayes. Guys, kind of the same formula applies as last time here. We'll start with the the National League wild card game, where the Pittsburgh Pirates will have it at PNC Park for the third straight season. They're ready to send Garrett Cole to the mound to face Jake Arrieta, who had the best ERA in Major League Baseball history in the second half of a season. Do you think they made the right decision, or would you have gone with a different pitcher in this particular situation here, this wild card game?
To me, this is a no-brainer. You go with Garrett Cole. He's been your ace all year long. He's finally made that leap from promising to exceptional. His ERA is 2.60. He has 19 wins, and he's been your lead dog all year long. So why not go to him? And to me, it's just Garrett Cole is the best pitcher the Pirates have, and last year they didn't have their best pitcher going in the wild card game, and this year they'll have that luxury.
Yeah, you draft Garrett Cole #1 for a reason. He's a power pitcher. He's a guy you want to build your team around. Besides McCutchen, you do want a star, and he is the guy that they should have, and they will always throw on a game like tonight. So I have extreme confidence in Cole, but we'll see if the Cubs come out.
Yeah, the Pirates finally have their guy, and it's Garrett Cole. I mean, the first wild card game was Liriano, and he was great. Second wild card game, it was Volquez, and he wasn't very good, but now they have Garrett Cole. He's been their ace all year, like you said. He's had great stats, not as great as Arrieta's second half, but he's been solid all year. That's the kind of guy you want to go in a wild card game. He's young, he's resilient, he's a fighter on the mound. That's all you can say about him. I mean, he's a competitor, and that's what you want in a one-game playoff, so I'll take Garrett Cole.
Absolutely, and it's worth mentioning that one of the main reasons that Edinson Volquez pitched in that wild card game last year is because the Pirates still mathematically had a chance of the division. And they went with Garrett Cole on that Sunday, only 3 days rest. They didn't want to pitch him on 3 days rest, so they went with Volquez instead. Didn't really work out well for them in 2014. Now, Garrett Cole has to go up against the Chicago Cubs, who are the only team that have won 50 games after the All-Star break. Perhaps one of the hottest teams in baseball. Would you say they are the hottest team in baseball heading into the postseason?
I would say they are. Like you said, 50 wins after the All-Star break is quite an accomplishment. However, the Pirates have won 45 games themselves after the All-Star break. So it's not like they've slumped. To me, this is as close as you can get. This, to me, is a game that's going to be very, very tough to call. You have two great pitchers going against each other. And one thing that I don't think has received enough play is that Chris Bryant, that great rookie for the Cubs, his splits home and away are night and day. He does not hit very well outside of Wrigley Field, and if he has a down game, suddenly you're only looking at one really good hitter in the middle of that Cub order, and that's Anthony Rizzo. So I feel like Arrieta's due to maybe take a step back, although history has shown that he hasn't taken many steps back all year.
You know, it's actually a shame that these two teams are in the same division and with the best team in baseball as well, because I'd love to see these two teams in World Series, but that's a different topic. The Cubs have played the best baseball since the All-Star break, but not many people remember that the Pirates were below 500 mid-April. So they have been playing hot, and I think they could get hotter. And, yeah.
I don't know how you say the Cubs aren't the hottest team in baseball right now. Maybe Toronto's in the conversation, but 50 wins, that speaks for itself. I mean, the Cubs have been great. For a moment there, I thought they'd even sneak up on the Pirates and have a chance to overtake them. I'm a Pirates fan, so thank goodness it didn't happen. But yeah, the Cubs have been tremendous, led by Arrieta, and John Lester's been decent for them, not as good as they thought. But yeah, the Cubs have been great, and this is going to be a fantastic matchup. Yeah,
this National League Central Division has been phenomenal all year long. Of course, 3 teams in the playoffs from the National League Central. It took the Pirates the last day of the regular season to clinch the home wild card game. As you said, Chris, the Cubs were right on the Pirates' tails, and there was even a time that it was possible that they could have caught the St. Louis Cardinals. But whoever does win this wild card game has to go and play the St. Louis Cardinals, because the Cardinals won over 100 games this year. The first team since the Philadelphia Phillies won 102 games in 2011. The Cardinals have won the NL Central for 3 straight years. They've been to the playoffs 5 straight years, a model of consistency. So looking at this St. Louis Cardinals, they're going to face an NL Central opponent, so both teams will be very familiar with each other, but is their experience going to give them an advantage over whoever they have to face, whether it be the Pirates or the Cubs?
The Cardinals, to me, are one of those teams that all of their best traits don't show up in the stats. I don't know if we've quantified it yet, but there's something about them. I mean, I don't know if it's coaching, I don't know what it is, but it makes them win tight games. They know how to win. And is there any other team that is missing their two best starting pitchers and arguably their best position player that we're considering for going to the World Series? The Cardinals are missing Carlos Martinez, Adam Wainwright, and Yadier Molina. But I do think that it will hurt them losing those guys. I don't think they're going to make it out of the division series against whoever wins the Pirates-Cubs game. I just think that they're just missing too many pieces.
I think that the Cardinals, as well as they played this year, don't go anywhere because the best teams in baseball since 2009, each team with the best record has now won the World Series. So I think they'll lose, but to who, that seems up. That's the real question. And it is a big factor losing Yadier Molina. He's the clubhouse leader. He's the backstop. He's the best player on that team, and I think the best catcher in baseball. So time will tell how far they can take themselves without him.
Yeah, on paper it seems like the Cardinals have a great advantage playing with the home field advantage in the division series already, but they're facing either the Cubs or the Pirates, two teams that have the second and third best records in all of baseball, just happen to be in their division, and they're going to play one of them. With all their injuries, like we've talked about, they've had a lot of injuries, especially pitching with Martinez and Wainwright, and they've had some position player injuries too. Matt Holliday was down for a while, so I think the Cardinals have an advantage on paper, but I don't see them getting out of that division series like you guys talked about. We might be wrong, they might sweep, but who knows? I think they don't have an advantage when it comes to the on-the-field play against the Pirates or the Cubs.
Yeah, and unlike the American League where the Royals probably have a distinct advantage over whichever opponent they have to face, the Cardinals are going to have a tough time with either the Cubs or the Pirates because, they've played each other in the NL Central all year long. All these teams have kind of beat up on each other, all have similar records, about 500 records against each other in head-to-head matchups. And like I said, the familiarity doesn't help at all in that sense at all. But we'll move on to the other playoff series here. The New York Mets, of course, making their first playoff appearance since 2006. They've got some really good young arms, some strong pitching, and they've been assembling this pitching for years now. Do you think they have the best rotation out of the 10 playoff teams in the 2015 postseason?
I don't think they have the best rotation even in their own series right now. I think the Dodgers are a far superior rotation because you look at it, what do the Mets have after Harvey and DeGrom? Bartolo Colon, I love him. He's an inspiration to all the bigger guys out there. And Syndergaard, but neither of them have really pitched all that well, frankly. And so if you're going to distill it down to the 1 and 2 guys, Harvey and DeGrom, they're going up against Kershaw and Greinke, which in my opinion, Kershaw and Greinke are the best pitching tandem we've seen since Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I don't consider the Dodgers to be a great team, but I think they do beat the Mets, and I think they have a better rotation than the Mets.
Ask me that question in 2 years, maybe even next year, because I think these Mets are likable and they're young, and they will be the best rotation that we've seen since the Braves. Smoltz, Maddox. What's the other guy? Glavine, yeah. I wasn't old enough to see them, so I don't remember, but I will remember the Mets that are playing right now.
I don't think the Mets have the best rotation. I agree with you guys. They're deep. Harvey, DeGrom, Syndergaard, Colon, like you said. But Syndergaard, Harvey, and DeGrom don't have any experience in the postseason, if that counts for anything. And the Dodgers, like you said, have Kershaw and Greinke, that 1-2 punch, even though they don't have many guys after that, like we talked about before we went on air. But the Mets, they have a deep rotation, but is it the best? I don't think so. I think the Dodgers overall have those two guys just outweigh them, and the Pirates have a great rotation too. Let's not forget about them. Cole, Burnett, Liriano, and J.A. Happ has been solid, so I think the Mets do not have the best rotation.
Yeah, the Mets have to face a team with another good rotation, and you've kind of alluded to it. The Los Angeles Dodgers are playing the Mets here in the NL Divisional Series. The Dodgers, that is, joined the Cardinals as the only team to have won their respective division for 3 consecutive years, but they haven't appeared in a World Series since 1988. So it's been a while for the LA Dodgers. What do they have to do to break this 27-year slump? It seems like they have some good guys to lean on as far as pitching staffs are concerned.
I just don't see the Dodgers having it this year. I don't think they have what it takes offensively to overcome the bottom half of their rotation, because you look at it in a 7-game series, Kershaw and Greinke are only going to pitch 3 or 4 of those games. What's going to happen in the other 3? And Clayton Kershaw is not infallible in the playoffs, as we've seen over his career. So I envision I see the streak continuing through this year, 1988. It's not going to happen.
Well, I do see the Dodgers as not being one of the best teams. This is the best Dodger team we have seen in a while. And they have it everywhere. They have great pitching. They have youth in Seager and Peterson, and they have experienced guys in Rollins and Gonzalez. And if any year is their year, it's this year, but I can't tell you confidently that it is their year this year.
Yeah, I just can't see the Dodgers making it too far either, honestly. They've struggled in the playoffs for a lot of years. Kershaw's struggled in the playoffs. It's kind of a known commodity with him, excuse me. But yeah, the Dodgers aren't going to go too far, I don't think, with that lineup. There are a lot of veterans who are past their prime. The Mets are up and coming, so I think the Dodgers aren't going to go too far.
Yeah, Dodgers have a really good baseball team, but it's hard to pick them with all the other great baseball teams. There's some tremendous teams, as there are every year here in the postseason. And a couple more questions here, just some predictions to close out our Major League Baseball playoff preview, a chance to make you guys look nice and smart and call things before it even happened here. So we'll start with our final of 2 questions here. Who represents the National League in the World Series?
I think the team that wins Wednesday night in the wild card game is the team you're going to see in the World Series. I think the Pirates and the Cubs have the 2 most complete teams in these playoffs. The Pirates probably have the deeper rotation and more depth overall. However, the Cubs with Arrieta, you can't overlook that. So I feel like one of those 2 teams will be in the World Series.
I have to agree with that. Whoever wins tomorrow night's game will take it on the World Series, but I don't think I'm making it out of Indiana alive tonight by saying that I think it's going to be the Cubs.
I don't have a very hot take on this either. I agree with you guys. Cubs-Pirates winners going to the World Series. Hopefully it's the Pirates, but who knows?
Yeah, Jose, I don't know if you're going to be burned at the stake or anything, because that's certainly a real possibility to have the Cubs win the wild card game, no question about it. But close out our segment here, our Major League Baseball playoff preview. It's been tremendous, and the coup de grace right here. Who wins the World Series in 2015?
Toronto Blue Jays.
Kansas City Royals.
The Buccos, they're winning it this year.
There we go. There's your predictions. We'll play them back after October is over. We are in the best time of year in Major League Baseball. The playoffs are here. We just set the stage. It's time to eat. The wild card game for the Pirates and the Cubs tomorrow should be a tremendous matchup, and we will certainly be back next week to talk about all of the happenings in Major League Baseball. For Jake Enders, Jose Villanueva, Chris Hayes, I'm Josh Hill. We'll step out, come back with some NFL talk when we return here on The Big Hit.
Oh, hey, Devontae, better work on something, man. I want you to check it out.
Keep working on that.
Okay.
And welcome back into The Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here on this side of the studio, and we're going to get back to a different sport this time, talking some football in the National Football League. We've got some new blood here on The Big Hit. Very pleased to welcome in Josh Baker to the show, and making an appearance from behind the camera, in front of the camera now, it is Randy. Epstein. Guys, let's go ahead and get started here in the National Football League. We'll talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the debacle that happened to them on Thursday night. 23-20 overtime loss to Baltimore, 2-2 on the year for Pittsburgh. And the GOAT of the game, not the greatest of all time, but the literal GOAT of the game was Josh Scobee. They traded a 5th-round pick for him. He was released. Steelers signed former Giants kicker Chris Boswell. So I want to kind of take this into a big picture perspective. Is the trend for going for 2 points instead of kicking the PAT going to increase because of all of the missed extra points? You look at it, and there was more missed extra points this year to this point in the season than last year throughout the entire course of the 2014 season.
Well, like you mentioned, obviously an awful loss for the Steelers. I mean, going at home with your backup quarterback, missing 2 field goals late. Obviously, Scobee needs to make those field goals. But just touching on what you said, I do think that moving the extra point back to a 33-yard field goal is going to have an impact on the NFL for seasons to come, because the change obviously has made the game more interesting. So saying that, with Josh Scobee, obviously he got cut because he didn't perform, and a lot of kickers have not been performing this year. So when you do have a high-powered offense like the Steelers do, the Patriots do with Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers with the Packers, obviously going for 2 seems like a great option. And if you do get the 2-point conversion more than half the time, obviously that is going to average out to kicking the extra point. So with the high-powered offenses, I think that it's a better idea to go for 2. But if the kicking is secure, because obviously the Patriots and Packers all have secure kickers with Mason Crosby and Steven Gostkowski. So I think it's going to change in the future.
I have to agree with that. I think if they kept Josh Scobee, then they would have kept going for the 2-point conversion, just because his accuracy for the PAT just wasn't consistent at all. And especially with the game against the Patriots, when they went for the first touchdown, they didn't even try to go for the extra point. They just went for the 2 points, and I think that's saying something. And I think that definitely had to do with their loss on Thursday. But I think with Chris Boswell, that could easily change with the trend.
Yeah, both of you really made some good points there. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is their 4th kicker this season, so that probably has a lot to do with it. They had a guy in Sean Sweezan, but losing him for the year, maybe playing more of a role than we thought going into it. But we'll move to the other side of the state and talk about an NFC East battle. The Philadelphia Eagles losing to the Washington Redskins 23-20. 15-play, 90-yard drive by Kirk Cousins drops the Eagles to 1-3 on the year. And Randy, I think you're a pretty good person to talk about this. Do Eagles fans press the panic button after last week's devastating loss to Washington?
I mean, I don't think that they need to press the panic button right now. I mean, you do have DeMarco Murray. I mean, Sam Bradford's played well. He played well against the Redskins. So I think Chip Kelly just needs to run. I mean, I've noticed the offense has been going kind of slow. I think that they need to pick up the pace a little bit. I think that DeMarco needs to play a little bit more. I know Darren Sproles has had a lot of attempts and receptions this year already. I mean, he's obviously a big part of the offense. But I do think that it's not time to press the panic button just yet, because the Eagles do have a lot of good players. And Kiko Alonso, who they picked up, Chip Kelly, Oregon guy, he's injured still. So when he comes back, I think it'll improve their defense. And I don't think it's time yet.
Being an Eagles fan, I guess I have to disagree a little bit. I feel like we kind of pressed the panic button during the Cowboys game. That was just an embarrassing game for the Eagles, and it proved the doubts about Chip Kelly to be true during the offseason. And I think going into the Jets, because of the Cowboys game, I don't think there was much hope for a win, but somehow they pulled it out. And then losing to the Redskins the following week is just, it doesn't make any sense. And you can't go from beating the Jets and then losing to the Redskins the next week. I think there needs to be improvement.
Yeah, certainly some inconsistencies for the Philadelphia Eagles, and DeMarco Murray has come out and said that he's not really too happy with the play calling, and there's been a couple of people that saying maybe Chip Kelly's system isn't working out, and whenever they're playing so inconsistent, certainly some merit to that. We'll see what they can do moving on from here. But there are, of course, a couple of teams, as the same happens every year, that get off to good starts, and this year's no different right now. A month into the year, there's 6 undefeated teams in the National Football League. I'll just run through them real quick. The Bengals, Broncos, Falcons, Packers, Panthers, and Patriots, all undefeated. So looking at these 6 teams, who would you say is the best team in the National Football League right now, and why do you go with this particular team?
Well, I think the Packers are the best team. They are 4-0. I mean, the Patriots are 3-0, and they've had their bye week last week, so obviously they're not at 4 wins yet. But I do think when you have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback that you're always going to have a chance to win no matter what. And like Stephen A. Smith often says, he is a bad man. And with him running that offense, I mean, I know they've had some injuries. Devontae Adams is banged up. But still, they have Randall Cobb, so many weapons, and the defense has played well. So I don't really see anyone really getting to them, at least in the early part of the season.
I think the Patriots would be the best in the NFL at the moment. After everything that's happened with Tom Brady in the offseason, they're still going strong, and they haven't shown any weakness on the field.
Yeah, certainly, and there are some teams that are really surprising to be undefeated. The Broncos, although there's so much made about them week in and week out about Peyton Manning and his arm strength, the defense is playing tremendous, and they're undefeated as well. And of course, the Bengals and Falcons are two maybe surprise teams to be undefeated. So we'll see who can carry this momentum moving forward here. But final question here to close out our NFL discussion. We did just pick the best team, but we'll switch to the other side of things. Who's been your biggest disappointment to this point in the season, and why?
For me, it has to be the Detroit Lions. I mean, Matthew Stafford, I mean, he's thrown for 5,000 yards in a season. I mean, you have Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate. You know, high expectations coming in really for them. So to be at 0-4 right now after last night's loss on Monday Night Football, I just really feel like that they're the biggest disappointment to me.
I agree with that, especially being one of the better teams in the NFC last year, going from being in the playoffs and then losing to a questionable call by the refs late in the game against the Cowboys, and now being 0-4. I think their season doesn't look too promising. But then also being an Eagles fan, I'd have to say the Eagles. Just the decision Chip Kelly made in the offseason has not paid off and hasn't benefited the team at all this season. And when he created his offense, he made a very strong running game. But right now in the NFL, it's mostly passing, and that could definitely be one of our weaknesses.
Yeah, certainly. Still a lot of time for every team to figure things out, whether they're undefeated, whether they're winless. Still a lot of time to right the ship here in the National Football League. We're a month into the NFL season. It's flying by, and want everyone to save this footage because it was a great big hit debut for Josh Baker and Randy Epstein. Good job, guys. We'll take a break, come back and talk some college football here on The Big Hit. We're rolling along. It's The Big Hit here on IUP-TV. So, guys, with the tournament coming up, what are IUP's chances this year?
I think they have a really good chance because the PSAC is not that strong compared to IUP. IUP moves the ball a lot quicker than most teams. They're very well-rounded. They've been playing together for a while. They've got a lot of big-time transfers. So I think that they have the edge over most of their opponents simply because they have experience. Experience gives you the edge any day of the week. So that's definitely why I think they can win the PSAC tournament for sure. What do you think, Norm?
And welcome back into The Big Hit right here on IUP-TV. We're going to continue the football talk here, this time move into college football at the Division I level with our college football analysts Sean Fritz and Jared Brown. Guys, we'll go ahead and start with a couple of premier Big Ten teams, and both teams struggled this week. We're talking about Ohio State and Michigan State. They played Indiana and Purdue, and both struggled like I mentioned. It was a tough game for each team. Both came out with the victory. Which team has more cause for concern than the other to finish the season undefeated? Because all year it seems like we're comparing Ohio State and Michigan State.
I'm just going to say Ohio State. I do know that they're the number one team in the country. They're on a heck of a winning streak. I just don't think that they've really played any good teams yet. I mean, with the exception of Virginia Tech, who they ran away with that game in the second half. I really have not been impressed with Ohio State. I thought that they were going to come out and light it up. I have been impressed with their defense, but I think offensively, no one has really been able to separate themselves, whether it be Cardale Jones or JT Barrett. They struggled with Indiana this week, who I was surprised with. Indiana's a very good football team. They're 4-1 now, heading into State College this week for a big game with Penn State. So I was impressed with that, with Indiana, but just Ohio State, they just haven't been able to really run away with any of their games, I would say. Like I said, they haven't played any quality opponents yet. except for Virginia Tech, and I just haven't seen them click. So I would say they have to be on upset alert. I still don't know enough about Michigan State yet. I know one thing's for sure, that they have beaten a quality opponent in Oregon. I know Vernon Adams did play in that game too, which is an even bigger, I guess, confidence builder for that Michigan State defense. I really like Connor Cook. I like their running back, the system that they have in place at the running back position. So I'm not too worried about Michigan State right now. It's more of Ohio State because they kind of just have not been in sync all season long, and I think if they don't figure it out soon, they're going to be upset very, very shortly.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. I think Ohio State has a bigger concern for them going undefeated. One, just because Cardell Jones does not look like a good quarterback, and Connor Cook looks like an amazing quarterback this year. Cardell Jones has 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions this year compared to Connor Cook's 10 touchdowns and 1 interception. And also the target on Ohio State's back is just going to be bothering them all year. They're the team to beat. Everybody's going to bring their A game. And having 2 quarterbacks that are starting quality is just, it won't end up well for them. Cardell Jones is always going to have that in the back of his mind. And if JT Barrett goes out there, then it's going to be in the back of his mind. I think Urban Meyer really needs to assure that whoever's going to be the starter has the job, and they'll go out there and play much better.
Yeah, we've mentioned this a couple of times on the show. Ohio State, with the #1 ranking, is the team to beat, the defending national champions. Everybody's gunning for them. Like you said, a great winning streak for Ohio State, and they have been tremendous the past couple of years. They're kind of the standard in college football right now, so teams are going to go out and try to test themselves and really give it their all against Ohio State. We'll see how both of those teams can finish the season. Of course, that big matchup coming late in the year between both of those Big Ten schools. But we'll talk about one of the premier matchups this week here, as Clemson was able to outlast Notre Dame in a 24-22 victory in Death Valley on Saturday. So looking at the Notre Dame Irish here, do you think that this kind of ends their hope to make it into the college football playoff?
I would say so. I think not playing in a conference really hurts Notre Dame, especially not playing that 13th game. The difference between Notre Dame and obviously some of these other schools, Notre Dame does play they do not play in a conference. They play a partially ACC schedule. And so that being said, there is a strength of schedule to a certain degree. They play some non-ACC games like USC, Stanford, who are some pretty good opponents. But I think that really hurts them not playing in a conference because they don't have the ability to play for a conference championship like some of these other teams do. So that being said, with the 12-game schedule, I think it's going to be really, really tough. I think it's all about style points now. They've got to kind of go in and blow teams out for them to get back in the top 4. I think without a doubt they're a top 10 team. I think they finish the season in the top 10, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get back into the top 4 just because of how some of these other conferences are set up and how they have the conference championships that can, I guess, get teams a spot in there, and it gives these other teams a little bit more of a strength of a schedule than Notre Dame does.
If Notre Dame wins out, I think they'll make the playoffs because they have one of the toughest schedules in the country. But that being said, I don't think they're going to win out without Malik Zaire. He was the leader of the team. He was their starting quarterback. And also the way Brian Kelly coaches, he kind of builds off momentum. You saw this last year. They were the #4 team in the country, went into Florida State, and then the entire season crumbled. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be another trend this season. After the Clemson loss, I think they're going to start to struggle a lot. And also, I don't think they have that good of a run offense against quality defenses. Against Clemson, Kaiser was their leading rusher, and he only had 60 yards. So they have games against Stanford and USC. I don't think they're going to be able to run against those teams either.
Yeah, very tough schedule for Notre Dame. It was impressive to see what Clemson was able to do. That's kind of a big win for that football team there. The Clemson Tigers, of course, under Dabo Swinney. Pretty impressive there, but kind of enough of that matchup. Probably the biggest matchup of the past week in college football. We'll close out our discussion talking about another Big Ten football team here. Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines are playing some tremendous football. Looking at the points allowed in the past 4 games, only 14 in the past 4 games. They haven't allowed a point in their last 2 games. They've really been shutting teams down. But Michigan's got a tough slate of games coming up. They've got 2 ranked teams, 2 top 15 teams on their schedule, number 13 Northwestern, then they have a date with number 4 Michigan State in the next 2 weeks. So what are you expecting out of Michigan here in these next 2 games? They've been playing well, but boy, doesn't look like things are getting any easier for the Wolverines.
I'm very impressed thus far with what Jim Harbaugh has been able to do in Ann Arbor. That being said, I don't know how good of a football team they are. I think they're definitely a top 25 team, which is where they're at right now. I think they're 18, I want to say, in the latest poll. But I don't think they've beaten any quality opponents yet, to be completely honest. I guess that comes into question when you talk about BYU. They blew BYU out at home 31-0, but I think that was kind of a letdown game for BYU. I just don't think they really had anything figured out for that game. I think they had a really tough start to the schedule. If you want to run through that, Nebraska on the road, Boise State at home, to UCLA, and then to Michigan, which is a tough place to play in the Big House. So I think that was more of a letdown game for them. I have been impressed, though, with Michigan and their offense and obviously their defense. But I just want to see it against a quality opponent, and it's going to be a good test going up against Northwestern and Michigan State, who are 2, top caliber teams, especially in the Big Ten. I think it'll be interesting to see what Michigan and Jim Harbaugh can do against them, but I don't see it being able to last. I think they're a top 25 team, but I don't think that they're going to be challenging for a top 10 spot anytime this year.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. They're definitely getting a bowl bid this year. They're a top 25 team, but Jim Harbaugh doesn't have the pieces he needs to be where he wants to be. It's his first year coaching. He still needs to work on getting the recruits he wants, getting those recruits ready to play in his system. But I do think they can surprise people against either Northwestern or Michigan State. I don't see them winning both of those games, and also they have Ohio State in the Big House, and Ohio State always seems to struggle at Michigan, so they might be able to surprise some people there too.
Yeah, for Michigan, of course, they've played well, but like you said, Sean, how do they play against top quality opponents? It's a good test, and we'll see how they fare against Northwestern and Michigan State in the next 2 weeks. We're flying by in college football here. We'll be back next week to talk some more football on the Big Hit. We'll step out and talk some IUP football after the break here on the only sports talk show that really matters.
Out of all the bird teams in the NFL, I really like the Cardinals. The Seahawks and the Falcons, no chance.
If it were up to me, I would eliminate all bird mascots altogether. Like, none. No more. I'm over it. It's not even that great or a scary mascot. It's not that impressive. It really bugs me that these teams have these type of bird mascots. Like, what is a bird? What's the point of it? I don't get it. I go fly around into a tree. I don't understand it. It just makes no sense to me that a team.
And welcome back into the Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to continue the football talk. We've talked some NFL, we've talked some Division I college football, and why not close things out by talking some Division II college football? That's what we're going to do right now with our IUP football analysts. Very happy to welcome Sarah Moltz and Cody Benjamin down to the set. Talk some IUP football here and talk about their last home game, more specifically their homecoming game, a 42-21 victory for the IUP Crimson Hawks over the Edinburgh Fighting Scots. Following their season opening loss, IUP now with 3 wins in a row, and they were really led by the back of one man, and that's number 27, Chris Temple, a career day, 6 touchdowns, setting a school record for the IUP Crimson Hawks. So obviously he was the star, but there was a lot more that went into this 21-point victory. Just give me a recap of what you saw and what you think of this IUP team here.
Overall, really great game. A great IUP win, definitely one that was needed. But like you said, the man of the hour, Chris Temple, he had 28 carries, 234 yards, and 6 touchdowns. It's unbelievable. If I was Edinburgh in their defense, I would be embarrassed. That guy ran. He was unstoppable. Not to mention that he was PSSC Offensive Player of the Week. He was IUP's Athlete of the Week, and he also tied former Shippensburg running back and current Green Bay Packers fullback John Kuhn's single game record, and that was awesome. John Kuhn actually tweeted at Chris Temple today, and I was like, whoa. He tweeted him like, good job, because our IUP football account tweeted at Chris Temple, congratulated him, talked about his 6 touchdowns. And then John Kuhn tweeted back, it was like, PSTC pride represent, and I was like, heck yeah, that was awesome. So pretty much Chris Temple was the man of the hour. He did fantastic, but most importantly too, the defense. The defense has been fantastic throughout this entire past games. Something definitely to be noted. One thing that I've noticed too is that Coach Signetti also rotates between 8 players, which is awesome, I think, in my opinion, because not only are you giving the defense a fresh start, but you're also giving other players a chance to play. So overall, great victory for us.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Temple is getting lots of love, and he deserves it. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. You really have to think about 6 touchdowns.
Right.
In one game. And it kind of seems like whoever's healthy in that backfield is the guy. I mean, Luigi Listabrinza, he ran for, 160 yards the week before.
Yeah, against Mercers.
And, I mean, Shannon Jackson, maybe he'll be the next one to top 100 yards. And pretty ridiculous game, but I like how you mentioned the defense as well. It seemed like in that game especially, they kept everything in front of them. Nothing short kind of gets past the front 7 of the Crimson Hawks, and it definitely showed Saturday. So I think as long as they keep that ground game working, I mean, we're not even talking really about the quarterback situation as far as altering the game when you have a guy rushing for 230 yards, 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why the running backs have been so effective is because Lenny Williams has kind of become the guy here, and they've worked that zone read scheme, and Lenny Williams has been able to pull the football and get some big runs on there. Chris Temple had 6 touchdowns, obviously, runs of 6, 48, 1, and 68 yards, and there was another one in there as well. So just dominating. There was short runs, it was long runs. He was just really feeling good. The offensive line played well. Tony Morganti went down, so everyone had to play some more snaps, but still really impressive. And like you said, Luigi out of the game, someone had to deliver. It was Chris Temple this week. But when you look at the single season record for rushing touchdowns, it's 19. Chris Temple's already got 7 with that 6 touchdown performance. We're only 4 games into the season, so certainly a logical chance that he could achieve this record. Do you think he will go all the way and achieve the single season rushing touchdown record here at IUP?
I do think it's possible, but you also have to remember that he's not the only one that's running the ball. The good thing about our team is that they have the depth. They have the other running backs. Luigi Listabrinza ran for 160 yards against Mercers last week, and then Drew Harris ran for 190 yards against Lock Haven. So we have the players, but it's going to be hard for him to. I don't think it's going to be hard for him to do it. I think it's just going to be difficult because since we've been changing up with running backs so much, it's a different running back every single week, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great problem to have, and I think with Coach Signetti, it's not necessarily. I mean, whoever's running the ball well is going to get more carries, and whoever has the hot hand. And I mean, after 6 touchdowns, obviously it's easy to say, well, Chris Temple has a great shot at this, but I think it's more likely that he doesn't get the record, but that's probably for the betterment of IUP. I mean, if you got a plethora of guys back there that can take the ball, I think that's the best thing for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking here to the quarterback situation, not really much of a controversy anymore. Lenny Williams really learning and beginning to settle in his role here. And Coach Signetti, of course, mentioning he's only a freshman. He's only going to improve. Quarterback Chase Haslett, it was a tough break for him. He did come in a series in the second half, threw an interception on a play where Prince of Paley made a tremendous play breaking on the football. Chase really didn't see him. So is this 2-quarterback system over, and is Lenny Williams going to be the guy here moving forward?
I definitely agree. Lenny is the guy that we're going to be moving forward with. Like you said, Chase Haslett came into the game when it was 28-0. Lenny and the team already had put us 28 points ahead. Nothing really to worry about. Not sure if Coach Signetti put him in just to give him some playing time or to give Lenny a break. But whatever the case was, unless there's going to be an injury or unless there's a blowout, Lenny's going to be the guy for us.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of under the impression coming into this game that rotation was over and Lenny Williams is the guy. And I think that's what's best for the team and for Lenny Williams. I mean, if you have a young guy like that, let him grow, let him make mistakes. And I think Chase Haslett has shown us that he can be a capable number 2, I mean, in the time that he had rotating with Lenny Williams. But I think it is over, and I don't think it's much of an issue now that we have, the running game that they have, the defense that they have. So much pressure is taken off the quarterback. and that makes it even better for Lenny Williams.
Yeah, and to be fair to Chase, the way the IUP offense is structured here with these two tight ends, it's kind of a spread set, but they're still really running the football a lot, and Lenny just provides that option. He threw a pick six too. Mitch Thomas had an 88-yard interception return from Lenny Williams. So the passing game hasn't really been great. That could be a concern moving forward. It hasn't had to be. The running backs have been phenomenal all year long, as has the offensive line. But you want to talk about a great passing attack. We're going to take you to this weekend here as the IUP Crimson Hawks travel to Seton Hill to Offutt Field to play the Griffins. Seton Hill, a tremendous passing attack. They are 2-3 on the year. One of those wins coming against a ranked Slippery Rock team at home. Seton Hill came to IUP last year for their homecoming. It was a 51-28 game that was very close until the fourth quarter. So Seton Hill 2-3. IUP's kind of had their way with them. So what are your expectations and predictions for this football game Saturday? Crimson Hawks back on the road.
It should be a win, but every game is a game. You know, anything can happen. But Seton Hill passes for a lot of yards, and IUP gives up a lot of passes through the air. So it should be a good game, very high-scoring game. If the defense can just do what they've been doing, it should be good. You know, stay strong. And if we can just control the clock, I think that would also be in our favor too. So with the defense, with our running game that's been happening, with Chris Temple, with all the other guys behind him, we should be able to defeat Seton Hill. Should be an easy game, but then again, you never know. But I'm going to say this is a high-scoring game. I'm going to take IUP to win, like, if we had to predict, let's just say, I'm definitely going to say like 49 to like 31. Definitely high scoring though. Okay. Should be a good game.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Seton Hill comes into this game averaging about 350 yards passing. And like you said, if there's one weakness on this IUP defense, maybe it's allowing those big plays through the air. I mean, we've seen them contain plays up front with that front seven and get pressure on the quarterback. But like you said, it's about controlling the ball, controlling the clock. And if they're able to run the ball successfully and get an early lead, with that defense up front and with the running game that they have, it shouldn't be much of a problem. And like Josh mentioned with Lenny Williams, you bring that dual threat at quarterback, that's going to make that could be an X factor as well when you have a guy that can run the offense with that kind of athleticism.
And Seton Hill, certainly a good football team, 2-3. They've played everybody tough. They beat Slippery Rock, almost beat California. It's going to be a real good matchup Saturday at 3. That game is at Offutt Field in Greensburg. Not a long drive here from Indiana, so certainly would be good to go out, support the IUP Crimson Hawks. I'm sure they would appreciate it as well. But I look at my pen here. It tells me to say thanks, so I'm going to do that here as we close out the show. Thanks, Sarah Moltz. Thank Cody Benjamin. Thank you all for watching. And get ready for the 2-minute drill. Willie G coming down here to close us out on the big hit.
Hello everyone. I have to tell you, what a time of year it is to be a sports fanatic. NFL and college football are in full swing, the NBA is knocking off a little bit of rust with preseason basketball, and it is October, right? The MLB playoffs are about to start, and I must say, I've been waiting for this moment since July. No, literally, the wait for the MLB playoffs has been like waiting for the Houston Astros to appear in the postseason. Their last playoff appearance was 10 years ago. Only Toronto had a longer drought among current playoff teams. In their last appearance, they went back-to-back in 92 and 93. The young but confident Astros will face the New York Yankees in the first of 2 wildcard games. The Yankees enter this postseason without CC Sabathia, who is in rehab, as well as their legendary captain working his October magic for the first time since 1995. Prepare yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a little bit weird. The second wildcard game, which will feature the Pittsburgh Pirates facing off against the resurgent Chicago Cubs, who are playing in October for the first time since 2008. There is only one big question here. Can the Buccos win a playoff game? This is the third successful year for the Bucks, and many thought a playoff run would happen last year. It didn't. But with this team playing as well as they are now, you have to remain hopeful, right? So I plead to you, the Pirates players, give the loyal fans of Pittsburgh something to seriously cheer about. It may be your last chance for another 20 years. Missed calls are all a part of the game. Anyone who knows this has been around sports. Duh. But not to be specific, when a missed call blows a game for a struggling team that is looking for their first win inside their own 10-yard line, going against the 2-time defending NFC champion Seattle Seahawks on the road, and you fumble at the 1, but it's intentionally batted out of bounds, which just happens to be illegal, you owe it to the fans and players to make the correct call. So back Judge Gregory Wilson, a late call is still a right call in my book. It's so bad, it has inspired Lions fans to buy a billboard to protest the call. Oh yeah, by the way, the Lions are the lone winless team in the NFL. But hey, what can you do? From director Michael Martone, producers Vaughn Dalzell and Kyle Condor, and the entire Big Hit crew, I'm William Gaucher. Have an excellent week.